Welcome to the Dusty Jobs podcast from Imperial Systems. Industry knowledge to make your job easier and safer.
Thanks again for joining us here today. We have Jeremiah Wann with us again. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, we're gonna today we got a couple questions that came in. We're gonna answer some of those. One of them was on system design. So we got Jeremiah back in. Jeremiah, tell us about yourself and what you know about system design, a little bit of your own history.
Right. Okay. So my name is Jeremiah Wann. Obviously, I'm the CEO of Imperial Systems, and day in, day out, that's what we do here, system design. So
Yeah.
what are they wanting? More? Is this more of a weld fume type question?
We're going to be covering some weld fume. Yeah, weld fume system design. That's what we got asked to cover.
Okay.
And you've been doing this for what?
Over 20 years.
Over 20
Yep.
years.
Mm-hmm.
So have a little bit of experience in this realm.
Yeah.
So let's just start walking through it from the beginning. Let's say I'm a customer and I'm coming to you and I'm saying, hey, I have weld smoke in my shop. What do I do? You know what I mean? Just basically, where do we start? What do I need to do to start to figure out how to handle this issue?
Sure. Well, it's a conversation we have daily, and in fact, I was just talking with a guy a little bit ago. Basically, so a common scenario is we get a customer call in or email us, whatever, saying that they have weld fume issues. They need to address it. And so, what we do typically is, we'll either send somebody on site, depending on, where it's at and the time frame we have to get it done. But usually somebody will go on site. If not, we can work with pictures and sketches and stuff to at least get started.
But
right?
An on-site visit, best situation.
Oh,
right?
yeah, always. Yeah, always the best thing to do for sure. Typically, what we need to do is, find out what they're doing, right? So is it MIG? Is it TIG? Are they soldering? What's the application? Right?
Yeah.
One of the things we like to look at too is, obviously, is it robotic? Is it manual? How many hours a day are they welding? What's their downtime? That kind of stuff.
So let's say I'm the customer. I call in. I say, hey, I'm having this situation. You're going to come out. You're going to look at my system. What should I expect? The questions you're going to ask me once I get out there. What should I have ready for you as a customer who's trying to solve my weld smoke problem? What is some stuff I should be ready with?
Right. I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, that's what's nice about the site visit is we kind of take the full responsibility. I mean, essentially, what I would like to do is just go take a walk around.
Mm-hmm.
Go see the application, see the operation. If it's up and running, I mean, sometimes we get a call say we're putting a new plant in and here's what we're doing. So that's fine too. But really, all we just need to know is what do the weld cells look like? Is there weld cells? Sometimes it's just big open high bays with overhead cranes. We can do that too. So they all have their challenges. But basically, let us get in front of you. Let us talk about. Let us find out from you. What specifics you have. Are you welding stainless? That's one thing today. It's kind of a big thing. We want to make sure that there's not hex chrome present.
Now? If there's hex chrome present, what does that create? Another set of standards? Is it another set of issues? What if I'm welding hex chrome? What should I be worried about?
Right. Well, I mean, the main thing is that, our filters can handle it. The filters will clean it properly and bring it back into your plant. Really, for that matter, to where you can breathe the air again. You just have to put a HEPA filtration after the primary filters to get that out.
So that would just be another thing that you're trying to qualify what needs done to maintain that air quality.
Yeah, not a problem. We also may deal with the way we capture it, right? So if there's something like hex chrome in it where you really don't want that smoke going up in front of the guy's weld helmet across his body. So at that point, you usually really want to use some type of close, source capture, so with a hood or with an arm or something, downdraft it, if you can.
So let's just take one step back. So you're going to come look, you kind of give us an evaluation of what our facility looks like. You got to identify what they're welding on, what the smoke's producing, where it's coming from. And then from that point, you try to decide what kind of system you need.
Sure. So, at that point, what we really like to do is, what size parts are you doing? Are they in weld cells? Are they out in the open? So basically, I'll break it down for you. you really have a few different types of systems that you can do weld fume in, right? So if you've got a high bay, you've got big parts, you've got overhead cranes, you've got a lot of obstacles, and you may be welding tanks in one part of the shop one day, and then the next day you may be welding semi trucks.
Yeah,
right?
big stuff.
Yeah, I mean like small tanks one day and,
okay.
semi trucks the next day, right? You never know what you're going to see in our business. That's
like a custom shop.
A custom shop. Yeah. So in that case, I mean, really the only way to do that outside of little portable units with arms on them, which we can talk about that a little bit. I'm not a big fan of.
Well, I can imagine only trying to drag one of those around behind you all day. It might be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, there's definitely challenges with those. But the really the only other way to do it is just do ambient. And what that means is just to put, duct work up above the crane rails or down below the crane rails on the stools of the crane, if at all possible. And basically we just work off air changes at that point. So, we may do, 8 to 10 air changes an hour or something based on the volume of the building. You can also do more like localized ambient. So if you've got let's say you got a 100,000 square foot facility, but you're only doing welding in 1,000 square foot of it or whatever, you can do ambient above that area as well.
Just kind of put a unit in there to handle that smoke, so it's not drifting into the rest of the
I mean
facility.
That's actually what we do here. We have 95,000 square foot facility, and we only weld in probably 30 or 40,000 of it.
So there's no need for dust collection where we're storing boxes.
Or where we're doing assembly, it's real clean. We don't do that there. So
Yep. So that would be an ambient system solution.
Yeah, that'd be an ambient system. The other way to look at it would be, so look, if a lot of times you go in a plant and let's say they're building lawnmower parts,
okay.
right? So they're automotive chair or car seats rather. I mean, there's different. We get into all kinds of different things, but those are small parts, right?
Okay.
And so let's say they're making those on fixtures or robotically. At that point, then you can do source capture. So if they're robots, then usually the robots are enclosed. If they're not enclosed, they're easy to put a hood over.
Yeah.
So that's more localized. So with a robot, you may put a hood over it, or if it's already got an enclosure, you just vent that enclosure. If they're welding in cells, then you can either do a side draft hood, downdraft hood, or an arm that we talked about earlier with the portables.
Yeah.
The issue with the arms, well, I guess I'll start with the nice thing about the arms is if they're used properly,
mm-hmm.
they could probably capture 100% of the smoke for the most part, right? And they use less air, because you're 6-inch diameter pipe right there versus with ambient, you've got to take more air into consideration. The downside to it is that nobody uses them. So it's tough because you even in our old plant, we spent a lot of money putting about, I think we put about I'm gonna say 12 arms down this one area, and we said, man, this is going to be the way to go. We definitely want to use it.
Yeah.
Of course, we put a C-Max in with it, and our cartridge filter, and as the owner of the company, it would just drive me absolutely crazy because we have a really good crew of people here, no doubt about it. And they're all in. They'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. But they did not like moving that hood all day long. So they're welding pipe or they're welding, a frame up, and every 6 inches you'd have to basically stop, not just reposition to weld again, but now you got to think about that hood, and that's really the last thing on that welder's mind, or it should be, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's got to worry about a quality weld.
Yeah, it's one more step for him to do.
Yeah. So it's just that, like, we just haven't seen them work well for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that situation, you're saying maybe a hood
in
a weld cell is a little bit better, or downdraft table is a better solution at that point.
I mean, and sometimes, we've done hybrid systems too, where, really the majority of it we're going to be able to capture with the ambient. But over in this area, they've got stainless or something they're welding on,
mm-hmm.
or they're doing, little 6-inch or 8-inch parts all day long.
Right.
That's a perfect hood application.
Yeah.
It just keep putting that part back on there. No big deal. I get it. We don't have it anymore, but we used to have a weld seamer at our old plant where, would weld 5-foot joints of pipe all day long. You can put a little 3-inch flex hose on that and boom, no problem. So we always take those things into consideration. Ultimately we're trying to design the best system for our customer. And obviously we have to be competitive. You know, we have competition, but more importantly than that, we have to design a system that they're going to use for the next 25 years.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeremiah, the more you talk about this, it seems like there is just not one size-fits-all solution.
No.
It's just not out there.
Right.
You kind of have to do an evaluation from the beginning,
Right.
see what you're dealing with,
Right.
and then I know you and I were talking earlier that some of the things you have to consider is, weld fume used to just be weld fume, but now sometimes it's considered an explosive dust.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, we just had our seminar here, with the industry expert on combustible dust, and we're always trying to kind of brush up our skills here and make sure that our sales team and our engineers on point with what the industry is doing, and to make sure we're doing things to code. And we talk about it a lot. That's one of the first things we do is we say, well, have you had your dust tested? And of course, in the weld industry or metal manufacturing, people just look at you funny because they're saying, well, we're welding carbon steel.
Yeah.
But up until about 5-6 years ago, we used to kind of think the same way. Like, well, no, we're welding carbon steel. I get that in wood, or I get that in sugar, or I get that in whatever.
Cornstarch,
of course, all these big ones. But carbon steel weld fume, I don't get it. But what happens is, there's byproducts in there. There's oil sometimes in there. There's, the metal can oxidize. There's different things that can cause combustion in weld fume. And so, some of our biggest accounts now, multi-billion-dollar companies are saying, hey, that's our standard. We've had it tested. We're at 70 KST, and that's what we want to do. So we like to bring it to the light and do what's right for the customer.
So that also probably comes into consideration when you're thinking about what solution you need, right? Because that would determine whether you need your collector inside, you need
Right.
it outside. It's not just as simple as sticking something on there to suck it up like a shop vac would do.
Right.
You need something, you need to know what you're dealing with
Right.
to have the right solution.
Oh, you bet. So just without getting into, we could have a whole nother 5 podcasts on combustible dust and NFPA, but since this is weld kind of weld fume and weld cells that we're talking about here, when you do combustible dust and you're trying to put the collector inside, really NFPA states something like that if it can be outside, it should be outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that should means that if at all possible we can engineer around it and get it outside, then we should. But sometimes you just can't. It's not possible. Dealing with big automotive plants or forklift companies or whatever, just to name a couple. The collector really needs to be inside next to the robot.
What do you do when you have explosive dust inside?
Yeah.
That sounds like a real hazard.
Right.
What do you do in that situation?
Well, so to the point where some of our top customers, they they're putting in a $100,000 weld fume system, and they're not upset at all about adding another $40,000 worth of combustible dust isolation type equipment, chemical isolation or mechanical. So that's how real it is. Want to say that. But what we do in that case is you can either put explosion vents on it, vent it through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
That's one possibility. You need to isolate the inlet so that the explosion or flame front doesn't mitigate back through the hood back into the robot to the worker. So we put an isolation valve on that. In addition to that, there's things like we have a new product called a Rhino drum. You heard about it?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good product, but it's the first ever tool free combustible dust tested 55-gallon drum. And so it's designed to stop an explosion from the discharge of the dust collector. So now we've put a isolation valve on the inlet side. We've got the Rhino drum or an airlock on the discharge side. And then, after that, then we've got the collector itself. We've got to deal with the explosion.
Yeah.
So you can either vent through the roof, or if you can't vent through the roof, then you could put a flameless vent on there, which is something you can look up on the website and see what that is. But then also chemical isolation is another real nice, easy way to deal with things. So
and, I would imagine whatever collector you have in there, whether it's ours or someone else's, you want to make sure that thing can handle an explosion if you're dealing with an explosion dust, because you have workers, you have equipment, you have everything that's in real close proximity to that. So that's probably you can't just put anything in there is what I'm saying.
No, that's a good point. So just we take that extremely seriously. To the point where, we just we spent, our first testing we ever did, and just all the involvement in that, we spent, well over $250,000. But that's been a while back, where we first started getting our equipment tested, by third party.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to do is make sure that it can withstand an explosion. And
well, if you're designing a system, if you're looking at designing a system when you're going to have to get one, I mean, these are all things you need to consider. You can't just go buy a used collector from the 80s and hope that it's going to handle what you're doing.
Yeah, you're obviously risking a lot if you were to do that. I think that consult, whether it's us, consult with a professional or another dust collection company, and just do your homework. Make sure that that they've done their homework.
Yeah.
I mean, we did, like I said, the first go around was $250,000, and we've done many since then. So I don't know how much money we have wrapped up in making sure that our collectors and our equipment meet the standards, that it will withstand an explosion, and the rating we put on our equipment.
So once you have the layout, how you're going to install the collector, where you're going to install it, how do you even know how big of a collector, how small of a collector you need? How do you figure that out?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of different things you got to take into consideration. I mean, obviously, like I said earlier, are the parts sticky? Is there oil? And a lot of times in stamping applications, there's release oil on there, lubricants on there for the stamping, so that can get kind of messy when you're welding it. That's something to consider. How many if they're running MIGs on robots, are they putting 1 MIG or is there 4 MIGs in there per robot? So these are things we look at. Ambient system will take a different air to cloth ratio than maybe a close capture one would. So we basically have internal formulas that we decide if it's a robot cell, how many air changes do we put in that robot cell to make sure that no smoke gets out. That's the idea really, is that you just don't want any smoke getting out of that cell.
Right.
And that's obviously good for the safety of the people. It's good for it's good housekeeping. You want to make sure that all your bearings and seals and all that stuff on your equipment that you spend a lot of money on lasts a long time.
So just to kind of go back, we're going to walk through this step by step. First thing you got to do is get someone in there to look at the system,
right.
See what you're dealing with, see what kind of dust you have, see if it's explosive dust, right? So that's kind of step one. Step two is once you're in there, you see what kind of system requirements you have. It might be an ambient system, it might be a source capture system, could be a little bit of both, right?
Right.
Then from that, then you can go to the actual size of the collector, and you got to kind of see what you need to make it safe, keep it safe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty easy, really. I could see where if you don't do it day to day, it could be a little overwhelming or feel overwhelming when you see it. But when you see smoke, that's an opportunity to call us or call anybody for that matter. Just get an expert on the phone and bring them in, because it's really, we try to make it pretty easy to do business with us. I mean, That's a big deal for us around here. And so, I mean, the last thing we want is, our customer to be struggling. And so we kind of take all that off their plate.
Yeah. We have guys like you. We have other guys out in our shop who've been doing it for a long time and have a wealth of knowledge here to be able to help out anybody who's trying to figure this out.
I mean, we have sales engineers all over. I mean, in here and remote, and we have a big network of representatives, and across the map, and if we can cover you for sure.
Yeah, and we don't want anybody to feel like they have to tackle this on their own.
No.
It's a lot has changed over the years.
Yeah.
Some information is still good, some of it's old. We want to be able to make sure you're making the right decisions and making sure everybody's safe,
right,
and have a good, clean work environment. And that's what we're here to do.
Right.
That's what our goal is as a company,
Yep.
is to kind of promote the health and safety of those who are working in your environment.
Right.
And
well, I think it's big too when you're, from my standpoint, I'm the owner of the company, and for me, it's always fun bringing people in the plant, customers, and you can say all day long that you really care about your people, and you can brag about your machinery, you can brag about whatever how much work you put out, whatever that might be, but when it really speaks volumes when you've spent $100,000 or it could be $10,000. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it could be a lot less, but a mid-sized system, maybe $100,000. Just to clean up the work environment, right? I mean, you might have spent $400,000 on a plasma table, but if the shop's full of brown smoke, I mean, honestly, what message is that sending to your customers?
Yeah.
and to your employees for that matter.
Right.
So,
right.
And I always think about it too this way is, when these guys go home to their families at night, and they're bringing that weld fume into their home, whether they're doing laundry, they go and they hug their kids at night, and I kind of feel like it's my responsibility and to make sure that they're not bringing this dirt home, this dust home, and
right.
so it's just I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. We want to help other people be able to have that in their facility too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and help design a system. So hopefully this has helped you if you're out there looking at a weld fume system, that you're able to figure out a little bit closer to what your requirements are, kind of how it might seem overwhelming. It's not really that complicated of a process, and don't feel like you're on your own out there. We're here. We're
Right.
glad to help you. Feel free to give us a call. Check out our website. Check us, drop a line. We're glad to help. There's people here all the time. So, Jeremiah, thanks for coming on.
You bet.
Thanks for helping take something that seems a little complicated and making it simpler so that we can all understand it. And write in your questions to Dusty Jobs Podcast at isystemsweb.com. If you have other questions about maybe how other systems are designed, if you have another application, and we're glad to tackle that for you.
Right.
And help you feel like you're not out there on your own. So
yeah, for sure.
Thanks for listening this time,
Yep.
and we'll talk to you again.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to the Dusty Jobs Podcast. Breathe better, work safer.